First, a recap. Elden Ring released in February of 2022. Less than a week later, a game developer from another studio tweeted, "The fact that Elden Ring scored a 97 Metacritic is proof that reviewers don't give a flaming poop about game UX. My life is a lie." Another dev added, "Nor PC graphics, stability, and performance, apparently." With a third adding, "Nor quest design, really." I can't tell if it was before or after. But Salama also tweeted, "The user experience is generally awful. And the UX is so bad that I can only imagine FromSoft's devs smoking at their desks and using CRT monitors." The PC graphics comment wasn't so controversial. Many reviews pointed out frame drops and stuttering in the PC version. But the other comments shook up the gamerverse, generating backlash from Elden Ring fans. Enough that Twitter accounts ended up being locked because gamers are nothing if not civil and open-minded. One respondent stated, "Yeah, sorry I need a huge freaking arrow on my screen to let me know where to go next." Conveniently overlooking that FromSoft literally littered its map with huge freaking arrows telling players where to go, at least for the main story. Subtle. But also, didn't Cyberpunk 2077 and Starfield maps take heat for not being useful enough? Where were the fanboys defending Starfield for its useless maps or garbage inventory management? What, do you need the game to hold your hand? Figure it out. If Salama feels there's a double standard, maybe it's because there is one. The critical devs were from Guerrilla and Ubisoft. It's worth noting that release date rivals Elden Ring and Horizon Forbidden West have user scores that are tied on Metacritic, despite Elden Ring having an 8-point lead from critics. Among other forms of backlash, fans made images comparing Elden Ring's HUD to that of Horizon Zero Dawn, and also mocked up alternate reality versions of Elden Ring's HUD to imitate the reality of inferior games. This is, of course, a classic strawman attack. Misrepresent your opponent to make it easier to dismantle their position. Comparing HUDs quickly. One Twitter user showed this capture of Horizon Zero Dawn's HUD, which is disingenuous because the HUD elements have been enlarged to their maximum size, a feature provided for accessibility. When I play, the HUD looks like this. But the disingenuous poster also ignores that every element of the HUD can be turned off in the custom HUD options. For Ubisoft, take a look at the HUDs for Watch Dogs Legion, Far Cry 6, or Assassin's Creed Odyssey. As far as screen clutter, they're about the same, but also 100% customizable and fully disableable. And before we heap too much praise on Elden Ring, consider these icons, which are never explained anywhere in the game. Do you know what these all mean? I mean, sure, I've figured out some of them, but not all. Not even close. And if we're going to praise Elden Ring's HUD for setting the high bar, this isn't very minimalist. But like the Ubisoft and Guerrilla games, it too can be disabled. But all of this is missing the point, because Salama's tweet didn't say reviewers don't give a flaming poop about HUDs. He called out the UX, user experience. He was not specific about how he felt the game fell short. So he may have been referring to the HUD, the user interface and menus, the inability to pause the game, or something else. We don't know. But in my playthrough, I noticed a number of places where the UX fell short for me as a gamer. Let's start with one of the most frequent complaints, the lack of a quest log. It's easy to say it should have one, but Elden Ring's minimalist approach seems to indicate that leaving the quest log out may have been more of a creative choice than an oversight. Nevertheless, Elden Ring has quests, with precise objectives that must be completed, NPCs that need to be communicated with, and specific locations that need to be visited, all in the correct order. The quests are there. 36 of them, according to Elden Ring Wiki. But when I tried to do Sorcerer Sellen's quest, not only did I have to refer to an online guide repeatedly, but when I needed to talk to Witch Hunter Jaren, I couldn't find him, even though I'd found the location of Sellen's true body, which would have been the next step. One method that would have helped me greatly would have been a map locator letting me know where Jaren was. But Elden Ring is above that baby handholdy crap, right? That's what makes it great. Except no, because when you find a letter at the Volcano Manor, it instructs you to go kill someone. And here's where you can find him. right here, at this unique locator, produced by the game that's supposedly above all that crap. This frustration is further represented by player comments like, "The fact that I'm spending 90% of my time actually on the forums following a step-by-step guide for quests is frustrating. Letting the player find it out would take genuine ages to get through for each quest. A simple journal could fix this. I'm going to start writing down literally everything and make my own quest log. I have missed quests and I find that really annoying. The absence of any knowledge of how to progress a quest and nothing to help you remember what you have done is the only thing in this game I don't like." Maybe that's what Salama was talking about when criticizing Elden Ring's UX. Now, I understand the game doesn't want to be too hand-holdy. We can't be too hand-holdy. But if they're not going to do a quest log, what if the game just provided a dialogue log? You know, a place to reread the interactions you've had with any NPC. Just a record of the dialogue. Would that be too hand-holdy? If you argue that the point of the game is to discover the game's secrets through the community, that no one is expected to play the game offline or without the community, well, that kind of makes Salama's point then, doesn't it? If that's true, then Elden Ring just isn't a good single-player game. Not if it's impossible for a player to find all or even a significant portion of the game's content without dedicating hundreds of hours hoping to bump into a missing clue or using the online community or online guides. But that still doesn't explain why I can't see Torrent's health without him taking damage or feeding him. Come on. Take a look at menus. When at a shop, when looking through my inventory for items to sell, if I accidentally click on an item I wanted to keep, it's gone. There's no buyback. It doesn't matter if I'm still in the shop or even on the same screen. It's gone. If I see an armor set that maybe I'd like to spend runes on, there's no in-game way to compare its stats with what's already in my inventory. Is it worth the runes? Is it not?
What, you want the game to hold your hand?
Yes! Yes, I do! Let me compare my inventory to store merch in-game. If you just acquired a new weapon, I hope you remember what it was named, because now you have to find it in this. And there's no view of frequently used or recently used weapons. If you unequip one, you have to go find it again. And because of the game's leveling system, most of these weapons won't even get touched. A place for favorite weapons would be a big quality of life improvement. Speaking of inventory, when hovering over a helmet, for example, the game colors its stats to indicate if that helmet is higher or lower than the equipped helmet in various stats. But you know what would be really helpful? Is knowing how much higher or lower the helmet stats are. To see that, you have to switch to another view. And even then, it doesn't do the math for you. Early in the game, players discover their weapons become underpowered as they take on tougher and tougher enemies. To upgrade a weapon, you need to find and spend smithing stones. A normal weapon can be upgraded 24 times. For the first 3 levels, you need to spend 12 level 1 smithing stones. For the next 3 levels, you need to spend 12 level 2 smithing stones, and so on. In all, you'll need 96 smithing stones to fully upgrade a single weapon. Double that to upgrade 2 weapons. And when you consider the quantity needed to fully upgrade just a single weapon, smithing stones are not that common. At some point in the game, it's possible to acquire a stone miner's bell bearing. There are 4 in the game, which enable you to buy smithing stones with runes. This is also the currency for leveling your character. 129,000 runes are required to fully level a weapon by purchasing the necessary smithing stones. And if you haven't played the game, yes, that's a lot of runes, making Elden Ring one of the grindiest games I have ever played. Players have spent hours just killing anything for the XP runes, just to buy smithing stones, or to level up their character or their weapons. To level up special weapons all the way, you need a total of 9 somber smithing stones. Or if you found all the somber stone miners' bell bearings, you can purchase all the somber smithing stones to fully upgrade your weapon for 97,000 runes. Double those costs for 2 special weapons you want to upgrade. Now, Believe it or not, I'm not criticizing the game for its grind, although I'm not a fan of it. Here's the problem. Say I've been using this claymore, and I've already spent a bunch of smithing stones or runes getting it up to level 12. Then I acquire Lord Sworn's greatsword, and I'm wondering, is this a better sword? Should I invest resources into it? The big question here is, how will the sword compare to my claymore after I've leveled it to 12? Better? Worse? Comparable? This dilemma applies to every weapon in the game. No matter what you've been using, if you find another shield, bow, sword, katana, mace, wand, axe, whip, club, whatever, you'll want to know if it's worth your time and resources to invest in a different weapon or continue with the one you've been using. And since you can't see your weapon's base stats after leveling it, and there's no way to see a weapon's future stats beyond its next tier, then choosing which weapons to invest in becomes a guessing game. A guessing game with a ton of grinding for a weapon you may come to find out wasn't worth it once it's leveled up. I experienced this. It nullifies the usefulness of all these numbers FromSoft seems to feel are so important.
Aw, do you want the game to hold your hand for you?
And while we're on the topic of upgrading, if you have the needed smithing stones to upgrade to levels 13, 14, and 15, but don't have the final 6 you need to upgrade your weapon to level 12, you're stuck with a level 11 weapon until you find 6 level 4 smithing stones. Only then can you spend your level 5 smithing stones to upgrade your blade to levels 13, 14, and 15. I'm not sure if that's a UX thing, but it's definitely a quality of life thing, and it's dumb. I have a number of issues with combat, besides the fact that I'm pretty bad at reading enemy telegraphs and timing my dodge rolls. I've never played a game that was so dependent on lock-on. Most games understand that if I'm swinging my sword, I probably want to hit the closest enemy in the direction I'm facing. But in Elden Ring, I'm having to toggle lock-on and lock-off like a light switch at a rave. Many a time I missed an attack because, while it was obvious to me who I was attacking, I hadn't engaged lock-on, and I missed. I also tried running away many times before I realized I was still locked on, which went about as well as you'd expect. And lock-on itself is a fickle thing. How many times did I lose my lock-on with an enemy because some creature or goat was in the background and the lock-on shifted targets? Troublesome with melee attacks. More so with ranged and spell attacks, especially considering how intense combat can be. And lock-on is mandatory for throwing pots and spells. See the guard down here? He's too far away if I lock on him and then throw a poison pot. But he's not technically out of reach. I just need to lock off and aim higher. So he is within range, but there's no targeting reticle for spells and throwables like there is for arrows. And speaking of arrows, check this out. Aiming down sights at this wolf, the arrow fires way lower and hits the rock wall. The next shot, using only lock-on, seems to fire from the shoulder and hits. The next shot, aiming down sights, hits the rocks. And the final shot, the wolf has moved to an even more disadvantageous angle. Using only lock-on is a hit. What the
Foul tarnished.
It's like aiming down sights releases an arrow from waist level. Can I get a developer to make Elden Ring hold my hand so that arrows always originate from the shoulder? Are we above even that level of hand-holding? How many times did I struggle to finish off a resurrecting skeleton because he fell too close to a wall, and I kept hitting the wall instead of the skeleton? I understand that hitting walls is a big part of Souls games. Gotta find those hidden passages. But I feel like a few lines of code could have been added so that I could actually hit a wall-hugging enemy. Probably too hand-holdy. And lastly, is there anything more cumbersome than these 4 rectangles? 3 items here, 3 items here, and as many as 10 items here, and potentially 12 spells here. And how do you select them? Scrolling. That sucks. Further, trying to scroll the left and right hand simultaneously doesn't work on PC. You see how both borders light up? The game reads that I tried to switch left and right hands simultaneously, but it only switched one. Tons of keys can be simul-hit, but the left and right hand armaments can't be switched at the same time. If I'm using a bow on a distant enemy and suddenly I'm attacked up close, I have to dodge roll away while scrolling through my loadout for my sword and shield. The first thing Elden Ring could have done is allow for hotkeys to assign certain presets, like sword and sword, sword and shield, shield and staff, or bow. But I think there's a better solution. Scrolling through 3 left and 3 right hand armaments isn't that bad, but it's cumbersome in battle. But scrolling through 10 or more spells or items to get the thing I need? Yeah, that's bad design. This is one area where Elden Ring's minimalist design is just worse than the standard weapon wheel most games embrace. And hey, if you've got a better idea than the weapon wheel, go for it. But Elden Ring scrolling through 10 things to find the one, and if you pass it, you gotta go around the horn again, ain't it.
Aw, does Widow Baby need someone to hold his hand?
Yes, I would really appreciate some improved user experience features. Hold my hand, please. And while we're here, there should be a dedicated key for flasks. Don't make me scroll through my items or make me use a quick item slot. The health flasks are probably the most used item in Elden Ring next to the sword. It should have its own button. Ditto for the FP flasks. Also, you want to improve the UX? Don't let my character drink HP or FP flasks when those bars are already full. Not that I would choose to do that, but I wasted plenty of flasks triggering it accidentally. You'll note that I haven't said anything about Elden Ring's enemy difficulty, combat options, weapon variety, graphics, open world, world building, or character classes. This isn't about the gameplay. We're talking about its UX. To be clear, it's okay to regard Elden Ring's missing features as a bonus, and not a flaw. It's perfectly okay to love Elden Ring, exactly the way it is, including no quest log, no dialogue log. Gamers have to rely on internet articles to advance many quests, no way to compare store merch to inventory items, no buyback, no NPC locators even for NPCs that change their locations, no way to compare weapons at different levels, a ton of unexplained icons, no aiming reticle for spells or throwing items, a lock-on that shifts to background targets, arrows that fire from the hip, having to radio dial equipment, and no pause for crying out loud. But had I reviewed Elden Ring, I definitely would have noted some of these shortcomings. So, when a dev from a rival studio tweets, "The user experience is generally awful," maybe he's just jealous of the game's higher review score. But maybe, just maybe, he has a point. Thanks for watching.